Hello and welcome to Cracking Culture Change. My name is Andy and today we're going to explore how to use values to build resilience and drive growth. My guests today are Beth Thorpe and Lewis Troy from First Recruitment Group, a global recruitment agency. I was keen to talk to Beth and Lewis to get behind their story, to understand some of the key decisions and tactics they've used to ensure that values are at the heart of the company culture. I hope you enjoy this episode and I will catch up with my reflections at the end. Hello and welcome to Cracking Culture Change. This is a podcast where you will learn from inspiring real-world stories about how to crack your culture. And I'm delighted on today's episode to welcome Lewis Troy and Beth Thorpe from First Recruitment Group. And the story today really is about how they've used culture and values to create competitive advantage. It's a great story. I'm really looking forward to exploring it with Lewis and Beth. But just to kick us off, Lewis, perhaps you could just give us a quick background to the company and yourself, and then we'll hear a little bit from Beth, and then we'll get into the story.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andy. So I've been with the business now for 12 years. Came through recruitment as a trainee and worked my way through as a director of operations and sales now, and really working with people and culture to really drive our cultural change over these last few years. Business itself has been running for over 20 years and focuses on recruitment globally within predominantly the energy sectors.
Thanks, Lewis. Beth?
Hi, yeah. So similar time to Lewis, I've been with First for around 12 years. And I started out doing recruitment, did that for around 5-6 years. And then the opportunity came up to do what was then HR. And during the time that I've been doing HR, it's obviously changed massively. And we've evolved more into we're now the people and culture team, and I've been driving that forward since around 2020, 2019, 20, and yes.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So I think just the period I think we're talking about of the company's development is the last few years. I mean, take me back to the right time, but I know we've got a sort of through COVID bit of the story. But when did you sort of, as an organization, start to seriously look at the culture and values and what triggered that being on the agenda?
Yeah, it's always been a passion of mine, probably since I started doing the role as HR, which was probably, how long ago was that now? About 8 years ago. But I think obviously COVID, when COVID hit, that was a big opportunity to really drive the culture. We did sadly lose a lot of staff, but the remaining staff that we had, we decided to really engage with the staff and sit down and completely redo our vision, mission, our values. And obviously with the help of PCAN, we did that, and we did lots of workshops, got everyone involved. And we wanted to be different as well. Recruitment companies tend to have a reputation for being a kind of bums on seats type business and not overly caring about the client's experience or the well-being of their staff. But we wanted to really change that and do that with the involvement of everybody.
And is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Lewis, around what were the triggers for why you decided to go and start on this cultural journey?
Not really. I think it was a bit before COVID that myself, Beth, Beth, and was speaking to the leadership team at First and highlighting the positives to really look into our culture and really drive a change across our business. So we identified that before COVID. It's just COVID, I suppose, gave us the time and gave us the prod prod to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'd identified as a leadership team before that it's something we really wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because quite often these things take a little while to sort of filter through the boardroom, as it were. How long was your sort of period of deliberation, if I can use that phrase, Lewis, before you got to the point where you said, look, we really want to get on with doing something around our culture? How long did that take for the organization?
I would say a while, because we'd always spoke around our culture and some of the positives that we had, but also the challenges that we had for a number of years. And when you're in the midst of everything, everyone's really busy, everyone's running at 100 miles an hour, and
Yeah.
it's quite difficult to, you realize you need to do it, but it's quite difficult to have that time to actually focus on it and actually put that time and attention into it. So it's something that I suppose we discussed for a while, and something we really, COVID, as I mentioned, allowed us to act on.
It's interesting, isn't it? So you were talking about it for a while, and then COVID sounds like it was the sort of trigger to say, okay, we really need to do this now, whatever this is. So sometimes it takes a trigger like that, doesn't it? And for you, COVID sounds like it was quite a big one.
Yeah, it really was, and it was it was the time as well that we tried to do certain things before. We'd had our values, we had our mission and vision, but I suppose COVID allowed us to move quite quickly. We and involve people and involve our staff, should I say, in the decisions that we were making collectively.
Yeah, lovely. Well, let's get into that now. Let's get into how you went about it. So if you can think back, it's always difficult to think back sometimes, but do you remember what were the sort of first steps that you took? And how did you go about engaging people in that new direction?
Well, as Beth mentioned, we sadly lost some staff during that COVID period, and we at that point we decided to really, I think the trigger point, Beth, or the starting point was looking at our vision and mission and redesigning that. And involving the staff in that as well.
And realizing probably that absolutely everyone's involvement across the business was key to that. So literally every single person within our business was involved in redoing what our vision and mission was, and then obviously our values that we have now. So we did workshops with them. We sat down and asked them what they felt our values meant to them, whether they meant anything to them currently, and then obviously what values they felt were most relevant to them, and kind of we reduced them, because I think we had 7 previously, and we've now got 4. So we did that to make sure they were meaningful, and that meant obviously a lot to our staff.
That was the first stage, wasn't it? The first stage really was, I suppose, deciding we were going to invest with Pecan, invest time as well, and also really starting to do workshops and with our staff, and that was one big thing I took from Pecan initially, was involvement of everyone. That not to dictate, but to involve our staff, because we've all been through a challenging period, and I think that's one of the reasons why we are where we are today.
Yeah. Lovely. So you started with a vision and mission and got everyone involved in that. And so they felt like they had a say in that. And as you said, Beth, connecting it up. So it was what's meaningful for everybody. And your values went from 7 to 4, was it? I think you said?
Yes.
Yes.
What are the current values, just out of interest, the 4 that you've now got?
It's collaboration, passion, open, honest, and reliable.
Yeah.
And adaptability.
Right. Lovely. Now, how
it was on the spot there, Andy?
Well done.
Yes.
I'm not sure I could answer that question if you asked me, but brilliant, Lewis. Well done. And how do you connect those up with people on a day-to-day basis? This is, of course, the sort of thing that a lot of organizations struggle with, isn't it? We have the values and we do a lot of work in workshops with the leaders, but how do we really get them through right to the front line so that people day to day feel them and use them and work with them? How have you done that?
Well, we've done that through various different ways, but we highlight through our technology internally, we highlight positive behaviours and values. So when anyone in the business is identifying someone really living by our values, we shout about it. So we really shout well about what we do well, but we also give opportunity for people to challenge behaviour as well. So all behaviours are positive. There's also challenges. So we have an open culture where people do challenge and really push positivity.
Yeah. What we do have is a number of initiatives as well, Andy, that we put in place. And we do have a group of culture influencers. These people are from across the business, across teams, around 6 people. And it's changed every 6 months. We change those people, the influencers. Right. And we have culture influencer meetings where they sit down and they work on our culture plan together, and obviously involve the rest of the business in that plan. We also have monthly retro meetings with everybody across the business to also just address how we are, to talk about how we feel we are against our values, so that it's kind of obviously always there. It's a consistent thing. And it's, again, we make sure that absolutely everybody attends those retro meetings.
The influencers and the retro meetings as well are people staff from all over the business, which helps with our collaboration. So that really helps different areas of our business have a voice and really have a collective discussion, and it's really helped us drive our culture forward.
Yeah. And just so we can get an idea of scale then, I love the idea, by the way, of the monthly retros, and I'm sure lots of organizations say this is a good thing to do, but actually doing it and making it happen every month in the right way and getting all the value is the challenge again. How many people does that involve every month for the retros?
How many staff we've got now? About 60? 60 staff? So 60 staff, and we try and involve everyone, Andy, as well. So even the directors are involved in it. We split the groups up into different areas of our business. But as the business is growing now, I suppose it gets more challenging to get everyone together. Easier when the business was smaller, but we're moving from a small to a medium business as we speak.
Yes. Well, let's come on to that. I guess another cultural evolution, isn't it, coming up? We're growing. You're growing again, and so let's come on to that in a few minutes. I'd love to ask you about the challenges that you see ahead and what your thinking is on those. But I just want to stay for a moment with what you've done there. You've got the monthly retros as a key sort of signature way of working, as we sometimes call it. You've got the 6 cultural influencers. Tell me a bit more about that. How do you select those people? What's the process for how does someone become a cultural influencer, and how much empowerment do they have? Because again, quite often we have these roles, champions or whatever you call them, and sometimes they're not as empowered as they need to be to cut through and really make a difference. So I'd be interested to hear how you do it.
Yeah, we change it up. We try and just do it so that everybody has an opportunity to do it. Obviously, we're not going to force people into doing it, but we just make sure that everybody's had a chance, so that everybody's being involved in influencing the culture in that way. So we literally, Liz, who works with myself, manages it really well, and she just makes sure that every time we're changing it, obviously it's around every 6 months we would do it. She puts it out and gives everybody the opportunity, but kind of encourages people maybe that perhaps wouldn't normally get involved in stuff like that. And when those people have got involved, it's actually given those people more confidence, because we do it in small groups, Sandy, because we feel that if it's in a small group, then you're going to get that diverse thought from the groups, because in the past we've had perhaps done it in a way where it's, you know, like a big group of people that don't really normally talk to each other, so they've felt not confident to come forward with ideas. But what we have noticed from this is the small groups and being kind of encouraged to do it has brought out new ideas, fresh ideas from people that you wouldn't normally get those ideas from. So yeah, it's been really useful.
I think you mentioned, Andy, as well about how empowered they feel. So you give them the opportunity to feel as empowered as they want. They report back to the directors on successes, on challenges, but also they challenge themselves, and it's highlighted across the business that they can and they should. But as I mentioned earlier, we have that open culture where everyone, not just the influencers, everyone feels like they can challenge and also promote positive culture.
And how do you keep that? So it sounds like you've got the ownership, people owning the culture, the behaviors, the values, really making those their own. How do you keep that live, keep that going? And particularly, I'm thinking as you're growing as well, what sort of routines do you have, or ways of working, or
when we obviously did the big change of culture, when we redid the vision, mission, everything, we did have that in mind at the time. So we put new processes in place when we recruit internally. So in the past we've done it on a basis where they've just had an interview about the role, their experience, but we now do have a more important part, which is our values interview. So we score people against a number of scenarios based on our values and how they respond to those. So we go through quite a robust scoring system with every individual that joins the business, whether that's a director or a trainee. And we feel that has helped the recruitment process and obviously retention of staff. And then we've obviously incorporated that into our performance management as well. We do have now a company-wide bonus scheme, which is biannual, and part of that links to our values. So that's the way we're kind of keeping it consistent. Across the business.
I think with the interview process now being heavily involved with our values and culture, that as the staff come into the business, it's sort of drilled in is the wrong word, but they're aware of how important our culture and values are from day one. And how open we are to challenge and promote. We keep that consistent with our retro meetings and from the trainees coming on board.
I'm just curious, as you're talking, I was thinking about the how much of this you offer to or recommend to clients, because in terms of how they work, I know some organizations are very big on this. They're very big on the cultural and the value match and all that, but others don't seem to emphasize it so much. Has it become part of how and what you recommend to how clients should work as well, or not?
Yes, it probably falls into more my world on the client side, Andy, and I try and every opportunity to make them fully aware of the process we've been through, and ultimately to give them as well our customers a better service and to satisfy. But a lot of our customers at the moment are focusing on their sort of EVP.
Yes.
Which again, we may go into, but it's been an area of our business that we've focused on. I've shared with our clientele the process that we've been through with our EVP to attract and retain, which has actually come across very well.
Yeah, practice what you preach.
Yeah.
Always good. I'm going to ask you a few more questions about the challenges coming up in a few minutes, but I'd love to hear how all this work has improved your business. Obviously, without not going into any confidential details or anything, but
Mhm.
clearly you're growing. I can hear that.
Yeah.
How would you describe it as in terms of the improvements that it's made by putting this focus and keeping this focus on culture and values? What sort of metrics do you have that you look at?
We carry out regular surveys with the staff. We did a survey prior to the project, and we did a survey just after, kind of probably 6 months after we started the project. And we could see obviously the scoring on that, and how effective it had been because of the scoring, and how people felt that they resonated with the values. The scores on our previous values were really low, and then obviously when
Right.
we did it together, they'd improved massively. So we continue to do this and measure how in tune the staff are with the values. So that's one way of measuring it.
You measure it as well, of how, how we retain staff. Retention levels are very, very high.
Yeah.
During a challenging period over the last 2 years. So we have retained a majority of staff, and we've attracted some great staff as well. In my time, and I would imagine Beth probably agree, in the 12 years that we've worked here,
Yeah.
I've never seen near enough 100% engagement from our staff, which is really, really unique, especially in recruitment. It makes us feel very proud and very comfortable with what we've done, and it's just continuing that now as the business grows.
That's brilliant. And how different are you then to the rest of the sector? You mentioned that in the industry, Lewis. Is what you're doing unusual in the sector? Would you say, or?
I would have said historically yes, but I'm seeing a lot of other businesses, similar competitors of ours, similar sized businesses, do something similar. We've all had to because of what we've been through. I suppose a lot of businesses have had the time and the opportunity to reset. We've focused on our EVP, which for us, I think we were one of the first. I would imagine most companies might say that, but I felt like when I was looking at our competitors, the culture was focused on, but maybe not their retention and value proposition in the market. Whereas has been a big area of ours. So I think culturally we've made that push. I think some of our competitors, but our EVP I think was quite unique.
Okay, and looking forward now, or looking at just over the horizon, what as you're growing, what are the challenges? You've alluded a little bit to these with it's harder to get everybody to attend the retros, for example. What challenges do you see, and how big are those challenges as you grow to try and keep this real cultural, focus that you've got?
It's definitely more difficult. We definitely find it more challenging as the business grows. The majority of staff have been here a long time, so we've got a high level of our staff that have been here 5 years plus. So they've been through the cultural change, they've been through COVID, and they realise how important that is to us. For the new staff that are coming in, we've got different generations as well that maybe not buy into culture or values as much as other generations. But we've and that's an area that we are finding challenging because we've more or less doubled in size since COVID.
Have you?
So a huge sort of increase in headcount and a big increase going forward planned. So a great position to be in, but the emphasis on our values and culture is more important now than it definitely was at the start. It's maintaining it now.
Yeah, we've invested in our senior management team as well. So we've got obviously across the business, we've got people that are keen and ambitious to step up. So we've invested in a program with Pecan to kind of develop them, invest in them as people, and obviously as they do that, they will become more pivotal in driving that culture.
Yeah.
ensuring that when new staff come into the business, they are on page with that from day one, with
Yeah.
their induction and everything. We've worked on the induction quite a lot as well, because I think inductions are, the most important time, aren't they, for a new employee to be able to retain them. So, yeah.
Excellent. And just we like to do on this podcast sort of top tips kind of thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you've learned really through this whole journey. I'm sure you've learned loads, but if there's some real kind of game-changing learning that you've had, and any top tips for any other leaders listening in that are thinking about doing this or embarked on this sort of journey themselves that you've described today. So two questions, I suppose, that are sort of linked. What are your main learnings through all this personally, and as a leader in the organisation, and also any top tips that you give?
Well, myself, what I've learned is to be completely open to culture and to change in organisation. It's healthy, really, really healthy. I've learned to definitely be more closer to my staff. Trust is so important. We've got a business built on trust. I would imagine there's nothing unique that we've done, but involving our staff in everything we do is key. So collaboration piece and real involvement gets everyone's buy-in. But I think it's allowed me to be hopefully a more relaxed leader and more engaged leader. And working on coaching the staff to develop their skills rather than, I suppose, old school recruitment dictating that was probably around a number of years ago.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I feel that consistency is key. There's a lot of things that people and ideas that people have, and obviously, they can put it in place, but it's keeping that going, and having the passion to really, drive that and keep on improving. So obviously we've done a lot of work on this, but for me, I'm just, eager to do more and more, and very eager to keep it at the forefront of everybody's minds. I think culture is massively important, especially when we're hiring new staff now, more than kind of experience, maybe in some cases. If they're the right individual for us and have the right values, that is key. And I've learned that definitely over the last couple of years. I've seen that and seen how successful the recruitment process can be, just basing it on that.
Yes.
Just to add to that, I've seen a change in, as leaders, you meet regularly, you look at what's next, your forward plan, and the majority of our meetings now they'll always have an emphasis on financials, as business do, but our meetings are heavily weighted to our culture and our values. And for us as leaders, if we get that right, and we get the right people, we get the right culture, we get the right values, then ultimately the results will follow. So the biggest change in this organisation that I've been in for 12 years is what Beth, Liz, and the business has done on our cultural change. It's been bigger than anything else we've ever done, and it's made the biggest impact. It really has, and now we'll see that going forward as the business grows, internally and externally with our customers.
Brilliant. Well, that's a really good note to finish on, and it's clearly working. You're growing, thriving, which is great to hear. And I'd really like to say thanks to you, Lewis and Beth. You've shared some great insights and really practical things that you do. But as you said, the challenge is keeping it all going, and you're doing that as well. So now I hope that's been good for you to talk about. I've really enjoyed listening to your story. And many thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. What a great success story that is. I think that's really impressive. They've come through COVID, they've grown, they've used that opportunity to reflect and really refresh and challenge themselves in terms of what they're about, and put those values at the heart of how they operate in day-to-day working practices. For example, I love the idea that they've got monthly retro meetings with everybody in the organisation, 60 staff, and part of that is to review how they're doing against their values. So it gets more challenging as they grow. They referred to that, and that was very honest, but that's one of the things that will help them sustain. Also, how they've used their values in their recruitment process with new joiners. So used to have an old-fashioned sort of interview and experience, but now it's much more about values and getting that fit as soon as someone joins the organisation. So the key learnings I think to take through was to be completely open, and they were very open on this podcast. Be close to staff, build trust, and consistency is key. So have the passion to keep going and improving, and culture is more important than experience. And the top tip they gave, which I thought was brilliant, is use your values to drive the right behaviours, and the results will follow. If you'd like to crack your culture, please get in touch with us at www.pecanpartnership.co.uk. And don't forget to subscribe and share this with anyone you think might be interested in hearing it. Thanks very much.